Me Guyana, land of many waters with 6 races living together.
Globespan is a Guyanese dialogue moving towards the realization of one nation in one Guyana. It's a platform that offers an all-inclusive discussion, with the pros, the cons, the ones that is taken aside, and the ones that stand in the middle. Globespan believes agreeing and disagreeing are part of the nation's building. Globespan believes that every Guyanese voice is part of the nation's building. As we span the globe for voices from the diasporas and those living home, we stand on our commitment that we are all Guyanese working towards one nation in one Guyana.
Coffee and Dr. Jagan, Bobby, she gave us our great sons. Rohan Kanhai, Coffee and Dr. Jagan.
As the world turns on its axis bringing changes, we as Guyanese must adopt to those changes for a better Guyana for all. Globespan stands on its axis with its belief that one nation, one Guyana, one destiny must include voices from all corners of Guyana.
Me Guyana, land of many waters with 6 races living together.
So viewers and listeners, welcome to another edition of Globespan 24/7, owned and operated by Mr. Nohar Singh, with our technical operator tonight, Mr. Devin Bissoon. We are discussing contemporary issue tonight, the oil discovery, the teacher strike, and the withdrawal from the National Resource Fund. Gentlemen, thank you for joining us. Joining us tonight to discuss this topic is Mr. GHK Lal, no stranger to this program, and no stranger to Guyana contemporary issues or even past issues. He is in the media almost on a daily basis. And also joining us is Mr. Colin Haynes, a businessman with a MBA. Gentlemen, thank you for joining us to discuss this very, very important subject, contemporary issues of the oil discovery, the latest recent oil discovery, the National Resource Fund, and the teacher strike. Thank you for coming. Thank you for joining us, viewers and listeners. Let's begin right away. If we may have a little background, you want to tell us a little, GHK, if you are familiar about this latest oil discovery?
Good evening, everyone. Mr. Haynes, Dr. Bisram, thanks for being here. Oil discoveries, a wonderful thing for Guyana. Good news for Guyanese. So we've heard about the first discovery in 2024 at the Bluefin well. It's the 8th discovery that has happened in the past couple of years. It's coming straight out of Exxon's mouth. There's a little hiccup here. As delighted as we are to hear of a new oil discovery, what are the details? What are the numbers behind each one of these discoveries? I remember when the discoveries were announced at the beginning of our oil finds, the excitement used to soar, and we used to be told it's a significant and it's an exciting discovery, and then the numbers came very, very shortly. Now there is, since April 2022, there's this disconnect. There's this silence about specifics pertaining to the oil discoveries. The last 7, the one from this year making 8. Indeed, appraisals may take a while, could take several years, but Exxon has been here for 25 years now, 1999, and they have discovered oil for the first time, or announced discoveries, about 8 years ago. Or yes, just approximately 8 years ago. Now, and the numbers immediately, why is it that now we have this blanket of silence coating, shrouding us from knowing exactly how much, what's the estimate? What's the estimate involved in each one of these here? Is it 1 million barrels? Is it 500,000? Is it 1 billion barrels? The sentiments in the street is that these discoveries are significant, and because they will add to the 11 billion barrels that we know about, there is hesitation, there is resistance. We need to know, gentlemen, fellow Guyanese listening, whomever else is listening, we need to know about what is embedded in these oil discoveries, and we do not know. Interestingly, and I had a commentary on this, Mr. Routledge, the country head, went to town and he told us, we are improving our understanding of what we found here at the Bluefin Well. Well, Mr. Routledge, I am offended at that. And all Guyanese should be, that after being here so long, after knowing what the science is down there, having a great familiarity in the oil business, in Guyana's oil structure, geological structure, having been 100 years in the oil business, you're going to tell me that you're improving your understanding. Understanding is always improving, it's always expanding, so we'll take that as a given. However, I think it is a camouflage to conceal from the Guyanese citizenry really how much oil has been found. Because of course that tears into what are we going to do about the contract. We're talking about, instead of 5.5 billion barrels, we were talking about 11 billions. Now we are talking about 11 plus X billion, X times 8 discoveries. This silence is too suffocating. This silence is unacceptable from my perspective, and it should be for every other Guyanese, that every other person who calls themselves a Guyanese.
Colin Haynes, you have any comment on what was just said or add additions to it?
Thank you for having me on the show. Thank you, Devin. Thank you, Nohar. Dr. Bisram is here today. Today happens to be March 20th, which is the International Day. And so today I was at a forum in Washington, D.C. about happiness. And, you have all the countries that are a happiness index, and it's a combination of social, economic that they can afford. I think what was disheartening is that on the list, the list is comprised, and I just briefly to tell you guys to get to my point. You got Finland #1, Denmark #2, Iceland. You got Sweden, Israel, the Netherlands, Norway, Luxembourg, Switzerland runs at 10. The US is at 23 and the UK is at 20. I think the closest is Dominican Republic at 69 and Jamaica at 67. So what does this say? And us as a region, and specifically us as Guyana, because now we're talking about the fastest growing economy in the world, having a large, massive oil find. Sphere, we have no data to show how that has actually impacted us as a nation. Really sad. What we know about this last, and I've been through some facts and figures about the latest oil find. For those that haven't
Mr. Haynes, sorry to interrupt. Would you be able to just rejoin for us? The connection seems to be sticking a little.
Yeah, there's a problem with, because he's breaking up with me as well. Yeah, just can you rejoin us, Mr. Haynes? Yeah, you want to reach out to him?
Yes, he's rejoining now.
What?
Just give him. Yeah, he's gonna rejoin. Just give him a minute.
So we could get Mr. GHK in the meanwhile if he wants to add to it. GHK, anything to add?
Well, I want to hear
He was talking about a happiness index. I happened to look at it today. I think it was 146 nations. I didn't see Guyana there at all. I don't know if Guyana was among those countries that was rated. But I thought it was quite funny because when I look at some of those ratings and countries, some of them are totalitarian dictatorships and they have very, very high happiness index. But anyway, go ahead, GHK.
Oh, Mr. Haynes is back.
Are you back, Mr. Haynes?
I just saw him on the lower left of my screen.
Yeah, maybe he lacks volume. But go ahead if you have anything else to add to these findings. So you're saying there are 8 findings in total.
Yes.
11 billion known barrels, but it could be much more.
Yes. Well, I think if you say that you have found oil, you talk about commercially viable.
That's correct. Yes.
Or you talk about dry wells. We've hit a dud. So that's in the loss column. But when you come out and say, hey, listen, we have struck it in another space, whatever that space is, whatever that well is, for you to come out and to put that into the public on the table, it means that there is something that is viable, a quantity that is commercially viable, that it is reachable, and that it is what the SEC would call fairly reasonably certain to produce. So you've reached that stage. I mean, that's part of the filing. You've reached that stage, but after that, we're not hearing anything else. I see Mr. Haynes is back.
Mr. Haynes, are you? Yeah. Okay, so proceed. Sorry, with your happiness index.
Yeah. So I was initially saying, listed the 10 countries, and I was saying the fact that the closest we got to and Jamaica at 67 and 69 respectively. Particularly, I was also as the largest or the fastest growing economy in the world. We don't have people's freedom within a country, how economic, social, and factors. Next, I think I was saying about what we know about bluefin, which is a late. So ExxonMobil said that now this doubles their exploration from barrels per day. So now I think they're moving upwards to 1.2 million. Right now, where we have more oil being produced than we have people in Guyana. So it means that each one of us per day. The price of oil right now is what, like 87.
87.
I think what is more disheartening, and I want to agree with what Glenn is saying, is with the.
No, not Glenn, not Glenn, GHK, sorry.
GHK, right? So,
yeah. Sorry.
It was Glenn. Sorry, I thought it was another. So, Mr. Lala, I think what's.
And just for clarification, I think right now Guyana is producing 646,000 barrels a day. I think it's going to be 1.2 million in 2026 and 1.2 million plus in 2027. That's the projection.
Right.
Yeah. Go ahead.
And I think with the current contract, it presents some major. See, there's no ring fencing. So we're getting all these new discoveries, but or the cost per field of oil, it remains. So unfortunate is that with each exploration. So remember, first we had about. Now we're at a place where we have now close to 40 exploratory. All right. So people think that because costs go up, profit oil will go up, but not necessarily. and the government's contract, which includes the production sharing, administrative fees, interest rates. They're paying taxes for ExxonMobil to GI, cost recoverables, administrative costs. I think that, in my opinion, presents a really dim picture if we don't really address or benefit from each of these wells that we're incurring.
Okay. GHK, any further comments on these this particular discovery or previous discoveries?
Well, let's put them together. Let's put them together. Since April of 22, as I said earlier, we have not been given any discrete data, any discrete numbers to say it is X or it is Y. As I said, for a discovery to be announced, whilst you were trying to come back here, Mr. Haynes, to reconnect, it has to be commercially viable. So to come out and say that. So what is restraining Exxon and the government of Guyana in saying, look, it's this or it's that. It's small or it's big with some approximation attached to it. Mm-hmm. And I think there's an intangible here. And the intangible is more than the word I used before, hesitation. There's a fear. There's a fear that with more, it will cause more social agitation, more social disgruntlement, and more social environmental resentment. That look, we are hearing that we are among the richest countries in the world and the fastest growing this and ABC, and they're all superlatives. They're all great, it's all great stuff. But what does it mean for me at 11 billion barrels of proven reserves? For most people, they will say, the masters of Guyana, they will say, well, let me think about that and get back to you. So you know there's a deficit there. So if there is this sort of interest, not an intensity of pressure as yet, at 11 billion barrels, and you've got 8 new discoveries as of last week, how much more is in there? Is it to take us to 15 billion? Is it to take us to 20 billion? Is it to take us to, it is going to take us somewhere north of 11 billion. And that could signify, or that could intimidate, if that's the right word, Exxon, that we could unleash some pressures here that we don't want to welcome at this time. So in other words, to say this differently, the people of Guyana are not going to sit down and say, all right, we're going to wait for some money, we're going to wait for the next budget, and we're going to keep applauding ourselves and clapping ourselves on the back and tell us, oh, we're the richest people per head, per person. I am the richest person per head in the world, when actually it is not so. My reality is not so. And I think that's the greatest handicap right now, the greatest concern of Exxon and the government, in that if we were to put out these numbers out there, even on the smaller end, it's going to cause a ruckus. People are going to say, look, we can't keep going on with this 2016 contract. Something is going to have to give here. We're going to have to get more. And that more has got to translate down to us. And that's what I want to add to this.
Okay. Before we leave this topic of further oil discovery, anything else, Mr. Haynes, you would like to add, contribute?
Mr. Haynes, can you just unmute on Skype, please?
Yeah, I'd just like to add to the fact with Glenn. Sorry, my computer was muted. To the fact with Mr. Lal, sorry, I keep calling you Glenn, is that so recently what we've been noticing is our exploration seems to be like the greatest economic cash cow for companies. For instance, let's take, for instance, the drilling ships, right? There is a bunch of noble ships out in the Atlantic they're drilling. And as we was examining this company, their costs, I think a report was made through Kaitro News. The cost of drilling for last year was $703 million. The company actually had an increase of almost close to $1 billion in revenue. And 27% of all of its economic activities actually have come from the Stabroek Block. So each exploration now means that multinational corporations are getting more revenues, are making greater profits. But because of the issue with this contract that we have, it doesn't seem that Guyana is winning. I think, to think about even the fact I wanted to mention that when we get our 14% or 14.5%, it is not true 14.5% profit for Guyana. That money also has to, there are billions of dollars, about $274 billion have to be deposited or have been deposited recently to be able to pay for ExxonMobil taxes. So in an ideal world, the company who's actually drilling, they should pay their own taxes. We pay our own taxes, right, to the government. But now you're seeing that a government is paying a tax for a multinational corporation. So that taxable income increases as well. So now your 14.5%, I think, goes down to about 10% or even less. And so that therein lies the issue with this contract. This contract, I think, it takes more from us over a period of time, with less actually going to the people of Guyana. And I think as we talk more about the teachers and all that stuff, we'll actually see how that can also have, great impacts as you go along further down the road.
GHQ seem to have another point. Yeah, go ahead, please.
Mr. Darren Woods, CEO of ExxonMobil, he said something yesterday to the media. This is what he said. Guyana could be, has the potential to be, one of the most successful deep water drill experience discoveries in the history of the industry. Gentlemen, fellow Guyanese, do we understand? Can we wrap our arms around what the CEO of ExxonMobil, who is intimately and integrally involved in our oil operations here, his company, that we could be one of the most successful in the history of the industry? And we're talking about deep water discoveries, exploration, drilling, production. I mean, this is drooling time. This is drooling time, and this has to translate, gentlemen, to something for our people. I'm glad to hear that. I'm delighted to hear that, which is why Chevron wants to buy in here, which is why everybody wants to run to Guyana. So why are we not running up and down, jumping for joy? Those discoveries embed a lot of things, incorporate a lot of things that are at, and there will be more discoveries. There will be more. How long is Exxon going to hold on to its silence? How long is Exxon going to keep saying, well, we've got a discovery and we're working on improving our understanding, and there's nothing more we're going to get? So we have oil, and that's all you need to know. We found more oil, and that's all there is to it. Something is going to have to give here, and I think the government is sooner or later going to have to share some information with us, whatever Exxon is sharing with it, and let's hope that it is the real deal. And so put all these things together, put them on a string. 11 billion barrels of oil, 8 discoveries up to the last one from last week, Bluefin. So that's the unknown. 11 plus that, those. And now Mr. Woods saying, and Mr. Woods can be taken to be authoritative. This man knows what he's speaking. He's not going to make a wild speech like that or in before the world. Guyana represents one of the biggest things that could ever be, most successful in deep water discoveries in the history of the industry. I mean, that rolls off my tongue like Shakespeare. I am proud to be a Guyanese right now with that. But what does it mean? It has to mean, gentlemen, something for us. and then we go into contracts and all that. So give us some, here's my bottom line, and I close it out now. Give us some numbers to go with each of these discoveries. Let it go, let it add to where it adds, and let us go from there.
So I just want to add something very quickly, if I can. So at times I think we're sometimes beating up on the wrong set of people. I think ExxonMobil knows way more of the Stabroek Block than we do as a nation. Additionally, ExxonMobil has a responsibility not to the people of Guyana. It has to be very clear. ExxonMobil is a multinational, publicly traded company that has shareholders. And if you're a shareholder sitting in, Ocala Beach in Florida, you're happy with this, right? If you're sitting in Irvine, Texas, or you're sitting up in Dallas, you're happy because your company is doing well. They're making great revenues. They're maximizing on this oil find. I think what the conversation has to shift about is what is our leaders, what is our government doing for us? Like I said, ExxonMobil, their responsibilities to their shareholders, to their investors, ensuring that that they can recover the cost of the investment to repay their bills and also to make a profit.
Could I pick up on that, please?
Please.
Dr. Bisram? Yes, indeed. I agree with you, Mr. Haynes. Exxon's responsibility is shareholders, stakeholders, workers, and so on and so forth. Exxon has no direct responsibility to us.
Correct.
I think it may have a spiritual, but the government of Guyana, as you quite rightly said, our leaders owe us, have a duty to us to get that information, or if they have that information, and I think that they do, Exxon is duty bound to share that with them. What is it that has been discovered? How much of it? To share that with us. Our beef, so to speak, our linkage, our communication line has to be with the incumbent government of the day. Having said that, let's go to what you talk about, Ocala Beach, etc. The leading shareholders of Exxon include Vanguard, Fidelity, State Street Asset Management. I mean, you're talking about 250 million shares for Vanguard and State Street.
Right.
I think 347 million, 300 plus million for two of those names I've called. Those people and other investment managers, Dr. Bisram, Mr. Haynes, this should not be unfamiliar territory to you. They get paid on the investment, shall I say, bets, decisions that they have made. Exxon is the darling of Wall Street right now and of the oil industry. Oil prices are where they are. Therefore, they have got to turn around and justify charging their management fees by saying, look, we have got numbers to back up where we put your money, where we put your 10 million or your 100 million or your 200 million US dollars. So we come right back now to the discoveries. What are the tangibles? What are the tangibles that Exxon has to share with its shareholders? Is it that, oh, we have made another discovery in Guyana? Or is it that we've made a discovery, 7 of them, and each one of them are world-class or commercially viable? And that means we can start at X million barrels more new oil. That's where we are. That's where their shareholders would be, and that's where we are the owners of this wealth. Every Guyanese is the owner of this wealth, and we are entitled to that information.
Okay, that be the last word. Thank you very much. I think it was a very, very fruitful discussion on the oil find and the history of the oil in Guyana over the last 7-8 years. Let's now talk about the teacher strike. GHK, can you give us a little background, what led to the strike and where it is today?
Well, it's in the court system, and they're talking about the court has ordered the Ministry of Education, or has asked the Ministry of Education to provide the documents that related to financial conversations with the union. That's where things are right now. The union, for its part, has said We are very unhappy with where things are, how we've been treated. We've come off the street, but we are getting ready to go back on the street. That's an ominous thought. We just finished last Thursday and Friday the common entrance exams. We have the CXC and CAPE in May, late April, early May, June, and that's big. But school goes on. The Easter term is finished. The third term, we have a little break here. The gist, the heart of this matter, gentlemen, listeners, interested parties, the heart of this issue, this dispute, is collective bargaining agreement. Cut out all the rhetoric. Collective bargaining agreement. Is there one? The answer is yes. Is the Ghana Teachers Union the agent that should be on the other side of this collective bargaining conversation? I'm going to refrain from dispute. And the answer is yes. The Labor Act of Guyana, Chapter 9801, Sections 30, 31, and 32 speaks about the mechanism of collective bargaining. The Trade Union Recognition Act, Chapter 9807, speaks about who and the process, the apparatus for identification of collective bargaining participants. In other words, unions. There are no controversies about those. Yet here we are. We can't seem to get this thing together. From the union's perspective is unilateralism and impositions. I happen to agree with that. From the government's position, hey, we've given you, we've done this and we've done that, and that's the end of the matter. Now, currently, there's this impasse. The union wants to start from 2019, 2020, 2021, 22, 23. The government says we must start from 2024. My perspective is this. President Ali, Excellency Ali, has gone on record as saying, in the context of the 2016 Exxon oil contract, we are honorable people and we honor our agreements. Well said, Mr. President. So what are collective bargaining agreements? Ones that have been executed, ones that are in force, ones that have not expired. I am saying the same standard ought to prevail and impact the discussions. Having said that, I've heard calls about 50% increase. That ain't happening. If I'm the president or I'm the government, 50% is off the table. Whoever disagrees with me or unhappy with me, I can live with that. Not the first time, won't be the last. Maybe 25% at the upper end. But I think the word here, the operative word after collective bargaining agreement, is negotiation. Gentlemen, negotiation means there's a conversation going on between two not necessarily adversarial parties. And in this discussion, we are working out inch by inch and piece by piece and the nitty-gritty. I'm trying to make this as simple as possible to get to a place where there is a meeting of the minds and common agreement. So I want 50%, I'm giving you 10. That's my best offer, and that's my best thing, whatever. And we come down, and we reach some place. It's not necessarily in the middle, it's not 25. It might be 15, it might be 18, it might be 20. We have a problem with the calendar. Oh, it can't be 2019, but yes, it has to be 2019, from 2019. That's the teachers. I am saying, well, listen, hey, let's start from 2024, but here's this. Now, these are our numbers. These are our numbers. Somewhere along, are we here? Let's look for a way. Let's look for a way, gentlemen, government, union, for how we can bring this, some closure to this thing with everybody claiming some progress. Everybody claiming that, not that we've won, but we've done what is best for the teachers and best for our children and best for this country. We love to talk that education is what's the key to the future. Who are teachers? They're the padlocks. Do I say that right? Or they're the doorknobs? They are the entranceway. These are the stewards. So we've got to treat them with that kind of dignity. Now, it's not 6.5%. It's not 50. It's not 10. I'm talking from me. It could be from 2020. Look, we'll give you 2019 and 2020. Let's start from 21. Let's start from 22 and 23. And then we'll go forward to 24 and 20. And we have an agreement that does this and sliding scale or whatever else. But the fact is, we are having a conversation. I felt so good about Mr. Robin Stobie, who I happen to know, and Mr. Loku, who I don't know at all, never spoke with, and say that they were able to bring us to this place after 2 days or something like that. Now, we need to roll our sleeves up. We can butt heads, we can get a little heated, but we must always return back to the table. And now that we are in court, it just seems that a lot of bad blood and bad faith have intruded into this and really has poisoned the atmosphere. Regarding where we go from here, my recommendation is like both sides try to find a way where there can be consensus and compromise and cooperation. These are dirty, dirty, dirty words in this country. But unless we do so, we'll be having these fights. We'll be running to the United States to get things sorted out. We'll be bringing people here, and we'll never get nowhere as a nation, whilst the world is saying, hey, you're the richest people in the world. You might be the dumbest also.
Yeah. So just for a little background, the teachers went on strike in early February over the issue of collective bargaining. And then the judge intervened about 2 weeks ago, saying that bringing the two parties together, the Ministry of Education or the government, and the Guyana Teachers Union to resolve this matter. And so now there seem to be a deadlock, and the Teachers Union is now going back to the court to find a solution over this deadlock. Mr. Colin Haynes.
Yeah, so I think there is no doubt that teachers should be paid. All right. As GHK says, they're the padlock, they're the cornerstone, right? They're the gateway for an education sector. Now, with a budget of $1.146 trillion, $135 billion have been put out there for education. And I think if the government is really committed to improving education in Guyana, which the teachers being compensated happens to be one of those structural pillars, the government seems to don't have any an idea. They don't have a clue. It shows they don't have a structural plan in place with addressing compensation and emoluments for teachers. What was mostly disheartening for me is I didn't think, and I don't think anybody, or I don't think any strategist in a government or any advisor, any minister could sit down for 1 month and allow teachers to take the streets and protest. To me, that shows how callous, uncaring, uncouth, inconsiderate. I mean, you take 1 month out of students. You have students writing Common Entrance this month. In a couple months, you have students writing CXC, right? That 1 month goes a long way in terms of preparation, final touches, or curriculum moving forward. I mean, I don't think it needed to take that long for them to come to the table to decide. Now, the union to me seems to be a little, they have their hands tied, because the court, and if you looked at it, the court said that the two should meet. It said where they should meet. It says that they should meet in a broad sense to discuss financial arrangements, but GHK, the court did not tell them, or the court cannot order the government to actually enter collective bargaining. So the court can't force the government to execute, which is what they do. The court is limited by saying, listen, You guys can meet together. We'll provide the atmosphere, we'll provide the environment, we'll provide the structural mediation conditions, but the court can't push the government, because that of itself would be overstepping executive between the judicial and executive, right? And there's balance of power, there are checks and balances when it comes to into that. So you shouldn't, no judiciary can actually, move towards execution. Execution belongs to the executive committee or the executive arm of the government. Now, when they actually sat down and talked, it also showed a bit of how confused and incoherent this government seemed to be. For instance, the news reports that the CEO, who's supposed to be the chief negotiator, began talking with the union, and then you got a PS comes in and says she's the chief negotiator. And so to me that presented a very inconsistent, incoherent. It seems like there was no plan. We didn't even know who was leading this, and it is troubling. And like I said, I think after 1 month, with all the advisors, with the ministers, the PS, all the advisors that the government have, even the president have advisors, I think that they should have had some kind of plan going into this meeting to somehow give the teachers some leadway. Now, what does this mean, or what should it look like? I think that is something that is left up to the union and the government to decide. But I believe that teachers should be paid, in addition to their salary, they should be given some other benefits, such as housing, such as duty-free concessions. And like I said, talking about the happiness index, a lot of these countries and all around the world, we realize that teachers just are not being paid enough, even in the most developed countries. But then there are things that you can add in countries like Norway and Switzerland, and them. They found ways to make teaching more attractive. So the idea is make it more attractive so that you can keep teachers or retain them.
Any further comments about the teacher strike?
Look, there's a stalemate here. The court is trying to work its way in terms of what recommendation it should make. I hear that part about execution from Mr. Haynes, and the court at least can do what is called moral suasion, to the parties. Hey, listen, it's in the best interest of the nation, and et cetera, go forth. And I think the court is trying to find its way through there. Having said that, going back to the beginning of this strike, to me there was some punitive steps taken. The part about wages lost, I understand that. The part about the cessation of the discontinuation of union dues, we're not going to collect it anymore. That one was problematic for me. I disagreed with that. Part of the strike was political. I disagreed with that too, because, listen, people are struggling out there. I am a remigrant, and I know people come to me every single day with different issues. They're not coming for money, but they're telling me, because I don't have, but they're telling me about their circumstances, and it's pretty grim. And we are this talk of the world. I want to go forth from where we are right now. So the government holds out, and the teachers draw their line. Dr. Bisram, Mr. Haynes, fellow Guyanese, where do we go from there? We're back on the street. What happens then? CXC comes and it goes, and CAPE comes and it goes, and we're into July. We're going to have a lot of bad blood there. Mm-hmm. We're going to have a lot of disgruntled educators whenever they go back into the classroom. It could be costly for us. It could be costly for us. I think sober minds need to prevail here. I think there needs to be this relentless, this endless, tireless search for a way out of this quicksand, we say in Guyana. We're just getting bogged down more and more, and all of the old differences come right back in.
Let's take a break. Let's take a break.
Yes.
When we come back, continue the conversation on that.
All right.
Globespan 24/7 is serving the community for over 2 years. We hope that the programs have been of value to you as we continue to connect with the issues and politics that matter to you. Support Globespan 24/7 initiatives by logging on to Globespan247.com. Click on Globespan 24/7 talk shows and make a contribution. Your contribution will help to build a better platform for the communities. On Globespan 24/7, you can also download the player for Roku TVs, Samsung TVs, and Android TV boxes. You could also download the Globespan 24/7 channel on your Android mobile phone. Support Globespan 24/7 and also support the companies that support Globespan, such as TravelSpan and AllFromOneSupplier.com.
Unveiling a literary masterpiece, Challenged Sovereignty by Dr. Ivelaw Lloyd Griffith. This book demonstrates how drugs, crime, terrorism, and cyber threats converge, shaping the destiny of the Caribbean. 12 years in the making, this groundbreaking study unravels the complex tapestry of challenges facing the Caribbean, including regional analysis and compelling case studies. Grab your copy of Challenged Sovereignty by Dr. Ivelaw Lloyd Griffith with an exclusive 30% discount at the University of Illinois Press or available on Amazon.com.
So welcome back, viewers and listeners, to our discussion on Globespan 24/7. We are discussing now the teacher strike in Guyana, and I give the floor to Mr. J.H. Galal to continue his remarks.
Thanks again. I want to close this out from my part. We have a choice before us. Teacher strike, any other difficulty, disagreement. We have to learn as a nation, government and people, to put our heads together, to lock our arms together, or we're going to dig our graves together. We have to learn something from the last 60 plus years. I think the government is caught in a bind. It does a positive for the teachers. You've got the public servants waiting. What about us? What about us? And justifiably so. We were in the same boat, and now it's our turn. And so now you have a baseline. Gentlemen, you have a baseline of not only wages and salaries, but about benefits and about who should get and what should apply and not apply. That's what I think is good. Then you have the private sector. You're going to have this situation where the public service is paying more than the private sector. I mean, that is a whole set of circumstances by itself, where the minimum wage is going to be a tier, and the minimum wage for the public service is going to be at a higher level. So I think I want to look. It's easy for me. I'm known to be a contrarian, not for a contrarian's sake, but it's just that we've got so many things. I want to see somebody do right. The leader of the opposition, the president, the vice president. I want to see them do right, because when they do right, I feel right. But here it is. We've got to learn to bottle some of the arrogance. You've got to learn to put aside, vanquish some of the selfishness. We are put here. We as commentators are being invited here to share not what brings prestige and prominence to us, but what is beneficial to the people who listen, agree, disagree to these programs, what we write or what we don't write. We all have a responsibility. This is part of our nation building, that we talk to each other, teachers and government, Ministry of Education, public service and whoever, public service ministry, and that we treat each other with respect. Maybe this is too radical for us. We treat each other with respect and say, look, we will not agree to disagree. We'll disagree vehemently, but never viciously. We'll disagree loudly, but we'll always come back to the table. You've got to go to court for this? Court to settle a teacher strike?
Let's hear Colin before we wrap up on this one. Colin, any further comments?
Yes, definitely. So what's beneficial? GHK, what's beneficial? Let's talk about it. Because I don't think teachers should be paid a percentage. I think we have to move away from a percentage, because a percentage can, if you take 5% of 100, it's you're anyway at $10 or something like that, $5. So it's not a lot. I think teachers should be paid a portion. And I think by large, when we're talking about teachers' salary and their emoluments, let's talk about across the public sector. So since nobody seems to have a proposal in place, let me make a proposal. So I've run some numbers, and I figured as an oil producing nation, we get about $12 million a day. All right. So after 20 days, we get anything around 240 million. This is US dollars. That translates to about 50 billion Guyana dollars. Now, there's about 55,000 public servants. And if you were to divide that, you end up with 913,769 Guyana dollars. Right? Now, this is additional to what everybody's getting paid. So you have your normal budget that you pay your public servants, and this is an addition to it. So if you divide this across 12 months, each person in the public sector will be taking home anywhere around 75, 76,000. So if a teacher was making 75 or 85,000, now they're making 160,000. If they were making 125,000, now they're taking home over 200,000, right? In this way, what you're doing is you're raising the salaries of teachers and public servants, nurses, doctors, everybody, firefighters, police, everyone's salary is being raised across the board, right? So we're not going back to this percentage and this incremental given. And sometimes I think it's like getting a raise from a friend or getting a raise from your family members. We shouldn't treat our public sectors like that. We shouldn't treat our teachers like that, or firefighters, or policemen, people who put their lives on the line every day, giving them a raise. Come on. I think as an oil producing nation, we can do better. So my proposal, and if the government is willing to take me up, I can expand a little bit more for them. But my proposal is, let's give everyone $75,000 across the board. We can afford it. Like I said, it only takes 20 days at $12 million. And this is pre the new discovery. This is not inclusive of Bluefin's production. This is not inclusive of eventually, you'll be able to get up to 1.2 billion barrels. This is right at 600,000 barrels per day. So this is not at 1,200,000 barrels per day. So I think that we have to look at constructive ways. And now with that, we can now add things like duty free. We can now add things like housing. I think the government can afford to, build 100 houses every year for teachers at $5 or $10 million. That's a drop in the bucket as well. We're going to get, on a yearly basis, trillions of dollars, hundreds of trillions of dollars from this oil revenue. But I think that if we're talking about making a difference, and as we're going to talk about loans in the Natural Resource Fund, you'll see that the country GDP is improving. So on the world stage, the big number looks like Guyana is doing an amazing job. The GDP is growing. It's growing great. We're the fastest growing country in the world, second only to Macau, which is an administrative region in China. But human development, how is that doing? That's not doing well, because the GDP says we're 22,000 per person, 22,000 US dollars per person. But I've done a survey at least 50 people, and nobody makes that kind of money in Guyana. Even the most skilled workers you talk to, they're not making that kind of money. So we have a lot to do in terms of improving human development. And I think that the government has to lead out on this. I think any government has to lead out in it. I think, if you're sitting in government, you have to think about, yes, you have to build roads and schools and drains and that kind of stuff. But, people can't eat those things. That's the reality. People need to be able to get money so that they can take care of their families, and not only just to survive, but I think families need to thrive in Guyana. They need to be able to say, for instance, the T20 World Cup is coming up. They can take their families to a game. They could, travel to a different country, to Barbados, Trinidad, wherever, and have a vacation. I think that's when we're actually talking about real development, real growth, and investing in our people.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much. The final topic we want to discuss tonight is the NRF, the National Natural Resource Fund. GHK, I'm sorry, I've got to rely on you again, calling you again. You want to give us a background about this NRF?
Before we go there, Dr. Bisram and Mr. Haynes, if you will permit me, please, I just want to say this. Yes, I agree. You've introduced a new formula there, and I agree that percentage is what we have on the table. But I think of this in terms of a total compensation package. Total compensation package. And the unions and the government are the best ones to duke it out or to flesh it out in terms of what that's going to be. Having said that, I heard your numbers. We want to be careful here. With that kind of money, you're looking at unleashing inflationary forces in this country that can really be difficult to contain once that genie gets out of the bottle. It's pretty difficult right now with cost of living. And we were talking $50,000 more in people's pocket, etc. We're going to have a tremendous amount of pressure put on in inflationary forces. And I don't know how we contain that with those numbers.
No, sir. I disagree. We're having inflation right now, and we're not paying people. I hear that inflation thing that happens all the time. With lower salaries across this world, even from COVID, salaries haven't increased over in the last 4 years very significantly, and we have runaway inflation. We have runaway inflation right now in Guyana, and we're not paying our people. So my thing is, let us pay them. Let's invest in our people. Obviously, there are measures that government can also implement to be able to tame inflation, but our government seldomly does nothing to ensure that happens, and that has to be, in cognizant with working with the Chamber of Commerce, working with big businesses. The Bank of Guyana has to do work. It has to stop being just the bank that collects facts and figures, but the bank that actually develops strategies to be able to control our economy. You can't have the Bank of Guyana advertising US buying and selling at one rate, and then when you go to the Bank of Republic Bank, Scotia Bank, they also have a different rate. That means the bank is not regulating the interest rates. They're not doing their job at regulating. And so when you allow that GHK, this is where it lends now to these kind of measures of inflation and runaway and stuff. So let's invest in our human beings. I just had to jump in there because I hear that quite a lot, and I don't believe. I think that's fables.
All right, let's get GHK the final word on that, and let's move on to the next subject.
Well, I'll say this: it's a conversation that needs to continue offline.
I agree. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And we are different. We are poles apart on that. But I hear you, and it certainly has some merits with low prices and COVID and all of that, and with low wages. So we move on from there. Thank you.
Sure.
Yeah.
The loans. Yes, the last topic. The National Resource Fund. It's a retirement fund. It's a savings fund. Fellow Guyanese, it's a rainy day. Can't call it a piggy bank. It's a trust fund.
Yes.
It's for the future. we can, one of the things that the people who have held on to wealth, they apply the prudent investors rule. And the prudent investors rule say this: protect the corpus, Latin corpus, body. Protect the principal. The principal is the monies that we get deposited into the oil fund, the natural resources fund in, I think, the Bank of New York. Yes.
The Fed.
Yes.
In New York, yeah.
Fed, right. So here's this. We are withdrawing too much of this. Last year, we withdrew 1.002 billion US, $1 billion US. We left in, I think, approximately, give or take, 500 million US. Might sound like a big amount of money. We have this year a huge budget, another record-breaking budget, $1.146 trillion. 40%, or $458 billion, is from borrowings. The last one I heard about was to borrow helicopters, not to borrow, $23 million US, I think, borrowed to finance helicopters from India. We are scheduled to withdraw. Look at this, gentlemen and fellow citizens. Our trust fund, in the hands of the government of the day, our trust fund, the nation's rainy day fund, this is what was voted on in Parliament. 100% of the first billion can be withdrawn. The authorization is in place. 100% of the first billion, 95% of the second billion, 90% of the third billion. You get the picture there, gentlemen? From the first 3 billion, you've taken out, what's that, 950? Yes, you've taken out over $2,800 million. You've taken out approximately 92.5% of last year's money. Look, yes, I said it's a trust fund and a rainy day fund and a retirement fund and all those things put together and whatever is going to be added by anybody. We can take out some money now, but does it have to be so aggressively, so recklessly? Do we have to build everything this year? Look at it. We do not have capacity, and the president, the vice president, government officers, critics, commentators have acknowledged this. So we're building so many things, and we're not talking about oil. We're building so much infrastructure. Do we have people to oversee those things? I mean, engineers must be running from here to there, and what kind of deep, authentic effort they can be to say, we are getting value for our dollar. So let's go back. We are borrowing too much. We are budgeting too much all at once. We are borrowing too much. We're withdrawing too much. And where does that leave us? It leaves us with, in my book, my calculation, too little in the event that we need really to go to tap into the oil fund and say, well, we need to help ourselves now because things are bad. Oil prices have dropped. The non-oil economy hasn't stepped up as it should. There's demand, or oil prices have raised, and there's demand destruction. That's another conversation. But we need to withdraw money. It's an emergency fund. But notwithstanding it's an emergency fund, retirement fund, and all of those things that I've said, gentlemen, I am saying we can still withdraw, but we withdraw prudently. And I'm not seeing that prudent, conservative, shall I say sensible, constructive withdrawal from the National Resource Fund and in our borrowings. There's too much borrowing, there's too much withdrawal, and it's exposing us that we really have a prolonged economic slump. For whatever reason, oil or no oil, we are going to be without a plan B.
Colin?
So I just wanted to, if what GHK is saying, it's kind of worrying, because I was taking a look at the NRF Fund Act of 2021. I think they made some They made some improvements from the Act in 2019. The fund provides for 100% of the first 500 million US dollars in the first year. Then it goes down to 75% of the second 500. So that's now $1 billion, right? And then 50% of the 1.5, and then 25% of the 2.5 or $2 billion, and then 5% and 3% as it goes along. This is what the act says, right? If the government of the day is not doing as the act, then that's a serious breach, and the finance minister has to, and I think the National Assembly has to hold him in contempt. Hopefully, the opposition is keeping an eye on this, and they're looking and ensuring that this aspect is being kept. Now, additionally, the fund provides as well in schedule or second schedule of the fund, of the bill rather, provides for the deposits to be eligible for investment in treasury bills, sovereign bonds, corporate bonds, eligible derivatives, eligible commodities, and they've also given caps to this, right? So, for instance, they've given caps for 45% of treasury bills, 60% of sovereign bonds, 40%, 20% of corporate bonds, 40% equities and derivatives and that kind of stuff at 10%, and commodities at 10%. So I think the act is a good one. I think it provides for guidance. Obviously, I think with the new realities of changing, I think this could be improved, could be built upon over a period of time. What I'd like to see, though, is I checked the website of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, not Foreign Affairs, but Finance rather, and the Act provides in Section 233(1)(c) that there should be monthly reports. So the people of Guyana should be able to go to that website monthly and be able to see how this money, what are the inflows, how much money is coming in, what was the balance before. And so they do have it. I think the last number they have there was from, I think, don't quote me, January 2021. So there's 3 years now, the public is being kept out of the dark on a quarterly, monthly basis of what these payments are. And it shouldn't be. So I think when this happens, it doesn't augur well for accountability and transparency. And given this government's track record with that, I wouldn't be surprised if that account is drawn down further than it is. I won't be surprised if it's drawn down further than the laws of Guyana is allowing it. But then again, I think the opposition and the people of Guyana have to really be serious about this. We've seen, and I think before this had happened, there were various discussions as to what our fund should look like. So, for instance, Norway has what's called the pension fund. They don't touch their sovereign wealth fund, right? They don't touch any of the money coming in for their oil. They said that is something we'll keep it for future generations and so forth. They have, I think, the largest sovereign wealth fund, if I'm not mistaken. And then you have places like China and so forth. They have a great deal of sovereign wealth of a fund. I think that the fund for Guyana, I don't see a problem with utilizing some of the funds, because as a nation, we're in the development stages. And I think that we can use some of that money, but it has to be smart, calculated investments that are made that over a period of time can reduce our ability. And I think this is what the bill provides for, that over a period of time, we're taking less out of the fund because we would have established a sustainable economic model to move our country forward, both developing infrastructure, developing our people, increasing our GDP, increasing the growth of our economy, investing in energy, healthcare, agriculture, science and technology, and so forth. But what we're seeing is happening is far from it. I think GHK, we can agree. You have large sums of money now is being spent large debts. We're spending a lot of money now. Our debt is where somewhere upwards of $3.6 billion, and that's no, we're 4.5 billion now. Yeah, I think that's where we are right now in debt. 4.5 billion US dollars. 3.6 billion was 2022. So we're almost 20% up in terms of debt. Debt is something that I don't think that it's bad. I think that what we have to do is find a way to sustainably service that debt. And that has to come from an economy that is growing, that is producing. And sad to say, I don't see that is happening in our case. I think we're getting a lot of superficial growth. And I want anyone to challenge me on that, because we're building roads, we're doing all these things, we're spending money. Some of it is being, also being taken by corrupt or ill means as well. There's no saying in that. But then investing in our people and being able to turn the economy over sustainably and grow it still remains one of our biggest challenges.
Okay, gentlemen, we are running out of time, so let me ask you for your final comments. GHK first.
I think that the government is withdrawing too much money from the oil fund. It's borrowing too much. I think we need to be careful. The Bank of Guyana reports from last year that amounted to $1.002 billion withdrawn. So I don't think they've overdrawn. The government has kept well within the perimeters of what the law, the act says.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yes.
So that's one. Second, so what I'm concerned about is that last year's money, 2023 deposits, you've got not 100% of the first billion, 95 of the second, 90 of the third, 85% of the fourth. My God, you've got very little money left back there as a cushion. That's where I'm concerned with as a Guyanese in this one of the fastest growing economy. And I think that we have exposed, we could stand exposed should things turn to our disadvantage. I hope that the teacher strike comes to a resolution fairly quickly, and new oil discoveries. I'm hoping against hope here that we get some information that says, look, it's X number of barrels. This is the total. This is where we stand, and it's a good thing. I'd welcome all these things. I'd like some more transparency on how the oil withdrawal money is spent. I don't want to hear about national development priorities. That sounds like a verbal sleight of hand to me. It can cover a lot of things. That's it for me. Good night, folks, and thank you.
Okay, Colin Haynes, any final comments?
I think this has been a great discussion. And I think that going back to our International Day of Happiness, I think today we have to decide as a country, are we happier than we were in 2015 when we had no oil? Did this resource for us brought improvement in social justice for our country? Did it raise our educational standards? Can we pay our teachers more? Can we pay our doctors more? Do we have access to state-of-the-art medical health and medical services? Are we providing more for our elderly, for our seniors? Are we being able to grow a sustainable energy supply so that we can improve our agricultural sector by food production, manufacturing? Have we been able to develop an economic plan? I think that what we're seeing happening in our government, you have one person making all the decisions. And that's the biggest problem with this government. You see, in no government in the world, one person makes all the decision. That is totally chaos. That could never happen. And that is not a successful model, right? You need to have a group of people coming together. That's why the president sits down with his cabinet members and everyone brings an equal share to the discussion and a decision is being derived at. But what we're seeing Guyana is more of an autocratic rule, right? You have one person making all the decisions, one person know everything. You know who that person is. I don't have to say who they are. And so that affects our ability to develop as a nation. All right. And I think that as a people, we have to sit down and look at the future, look at next year, 2025, and really decide, do we want to go back to this era for the last 60 years of having two parties that have constantly led us backwards, haven't made the investments in social, political, and economic growth for a nation? Or are we going to turn this tide and as a nation develop and buck the trend that those countries that had the resource course, sorry. And I think that, this is a very important aspect. I would like to say to the teachers, stand firm. I think that your efforts are admirable, and let's continue building a better and brighter tomorrow. I think our parents as well have to somewhat have a greater responsibility with that and education. And I want to see them as well out there supporting our teachers. I think that my plan, which I propose, I think we have to take a look at it and see if there's some merit in which we can get a solution for our teachers. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you, gentlemen, and thank you, listeners and viewers, for joining us tonight and our discussion on the NRF, the teacher strike, and the latest oil find. Thank you and good night. Enjoy your evening and the week ahead.
Thank you.
Thank you.